Your ancestors survived the Ice Age. Winters so brutal they would kill most people today within hours, and they did it without a single piece of modern technology. For almost the entire span of human history, winter was not an inconvenience. It was a sentence, and you had to earn your way out of it every single year. We think of cold as something you fix with a thermostat. You walk from a heated house to a heated car, and the worst moment of your day is the 10 seconds between them. But strip all of that away, and here is what you are left with: Homo sapiens. A soft, hairless animal that evolved on the warm plains of Africa, standing in air cold enough to kill it in a few hours. No thick fur, no hibernation, no fat layer like a seal has. The bears around you could sleep through it. The mammoths were built for it. The reindeer could simply walk somewhere warmer. You could do none of those things. The Neanderthals faced these same winters too, and they disappeared. But your ancestors did not. So why does every other large animal have a built-in winter solution, and the one species smart enough to know it was in trouble apparently had nothing? That is the question worth sitting with, because the answer turns out to be one of the most important stories in human history. The thing that actually saved ancient humans from winter was not a single stroke of genius. It was a layered system. 4 specific solutions, each one aimed at a different way winter could kill you. And buried inside that system is one invention so small you could hold it in 2 fingers, without which none of the rest was possible. Start with the most immediate threat: the cold itself. Fire is the obvious answer, and fire mattered enormously. Archaeological sites in Ukraine show fireplaces that burned at over 600 degrees Celsius, carefully constructed, not accidental. When wood ran short on the open frozen land, people burned fat and bone to keep the flames going. Fire provided heat, cooked food, hardened tools, and pushed back the darkness for a few extra hours each night. But fire has a hard limit. It only warms the side of you facing it, and the moment you step away to hunt or gather fuel, the cold returns immediately. Fire alone was never going to be enough to let a human being function in an Ice Age winter. What people needed was portable warmth, something they could carry on their body everywhere they went. The first solution was animal hides, and humans were doing this far earlier than most people realize. Cut marks found on cave, bear paw bones at sites like Schoningen in Germany show that people were skinning bears for their fur at least 300,000 years ago. A bear hide thrown over the shoulders blocks wind and sheds moisture, but a loose skin leaks heat through every gap at the sides, the wrists, the neck. In mild cold, it is survivable. In a genuine Ice Age winter, with temperatures plunging well below anything the human body can handle unprotected, a draped skin was not enough. The fix was a single tool so small it sounds almost absurd for the role it played. A bone needle, a sliver of bone or ivory ground down thin, with a tiny hole drilled through one end to carry thread made from animal sinew, twisted from the dried tendons of hunted animals. Archaeologists have found needles like this dating back more than 40,000 years, during what researchers call the Gravettian period of the Upper Paleolithic, and some sites suggest even earlier. Here is why that tiny hole changed everything. Without a needle and thread, you can wrap yourself in a skin. With a needle and thread, you can build a garment. Fitted sleeves that close at the wrist, sealed seams at the sides, layers with the fur turned inward against the skin, trapping a pocket of warm air against the body and holding it there while you move. The difference between a blanket draped over your shoulders and a coat that actually fits is the difference between uncomfortable and dead. One researcher described the bone needle as possibly the most important invention in human history, and when you think through what it made possible, that is not much of an exaggeration. Without the needle, there is no Homo sapiens living in Ice Age Siberia. Clothing solved the cold while you were moving, but every night, you needed somewhere to survive until morning. Caves were valuable, genuinely, but good caves were rare and heavily contested. Most of the time, if you wanted shelter, you built it yourself. In what is now Ukraine, at a site called Mammoth, archaeologists found the remains of structures built around 15,000 years ago on a landscape with almost no wood and almost no stone. So the people there built their homes from the one material lying around in enormous quantities: mammoth bones. Skulls and leg bones formed the base. Ribs and tusks curved upward to make the frame. Jawbones were layered like roof tiles. Hundreds of bones in a single dwelling, then covered with hides, packed with moss and sod, and in some cases, snow was piled against the outside walls. That last part surprises people, but a thick layer of snow is actually an excellent insulator because it traps air, and trapped air holds heat. The oldest of these structures dates to roughly 18,000 years ago, right at the last glacial maximum, the peak of the last ice age around 20,000 years ago. And evidence suggests some sites were used again and again over hundreds of years. These were not rough temporary camps. They were engineered winter quarters, built to last a season and return to. Inside that shelter, the third threat was waiting: hunger. Winter stops the land from feeding you. Plants die back, berries vanish, roots freeze into the ground, and many animals either migrate or become lean and scarce. For a hunter-gatherer group, this was a math problem with a hard deadline. Everything the group would need for months of cold had to be gathered or killed before the first deep freeze. Ancient humans solved this in 3 ways. Drying meat by slicing it thin and hanging it over low smoke pulled out the moisture, and without moisture, meat does not rot. A rack of drying meat in autumn was, in the most literal sense, the difference between living and starving in February. The frozen ground itself served as a natural storage pit. Dig down into the permafrost after a large kill, pack in the meat, and the cold that was trying to kill you preserved your food for months. And the most valuable food of all in winter was not lean meat, it was fat. When your body is burning enormous amounts of energy just to stay warm, fat is the most concentrated fuel available. Ancient people rendered animal fat into tallow and mixed it with dried meat to create a dense, portable, calorie-rich food that could sustain a person through the worst weeks of the year. Winter itself, the enemy, became the refrigerator keeping the food alive. The fourth threat is the one people almost never think about, because it does not attack the body. It attacks the mind. In a northern winter, usable daylight can shrink to just a few hours. Then comes 15 or 16 hours of darkness, confined in a small space with the same few people, night after night. That kind of relentless waiting can break a person in ways that cold and hunger cannot. Ancient humans answered it by filling the darkness with work, repairing tools, shaping new spear points, sewing and mending clothing, twisting fibers into rope, carving. The long night was not wasted time, it was the workshop. It was also where something larger happened. Around that fire in the dark, older members of a group passed down everything they knew to younger ones. Stories were told and retold, carrying memory and hard-won knowledge across generations. What anthropologists call oral tradition, the original method of human education. A huge amount of what we think of as human culture, the myths, the skills, the shared history, was built in exactly these conditions. People pressed together against the dark, keeping each other capable until the light returned. So here is the full picture of ancient human winter survival. 4 threats, 4 answers. The cold was met with controlled fire and, critically, with sewn fitted clothing made possible by a needle small enough to lose in the grass. The need for shelter was met by building it from whatever the land offered, even if that meant stacking the bones of mammoths into dome-shaped homes. The hunger was met by drying, freezing, and rendering food into stores that could carry a group for months. And the long darkness was met by turning it into the classroom where human culture was assembled, piece by piece, story by story. Every single one of those solutions was an invention under pressure. Winter did not just get survived. It drove people to create the clothing, the architecture, the food preservation, and the storytelling that eventually let our species spread into every climate on Earth. The hardest season did not fail to kill your ancestors by accident. They beat it, one winter at a time, with a needle, a mammoth bone, a rack of drying meat, and each other.